This video is brought to you by the University Writing Center, a unit of the Department of Rhetoric and Writing at the University of Texas at Austin. You can contact us at uwc.utexas.edu.
One fairly typical challenge for graduate writers is metadiscourse, or signposting. This definitely looks different across fields, and some disciplines certainly discourage it more than others, but in general, metadiscourse and signposting are a very useful skill to develop, and in many cases can strengthen the argument of your writing. But what are metadiscourse and signposting? Basically, metadiscourse refers to the ways that you explicitly identify yourself and your ideas within your writing. You're calling attention to the fact that your writing is a text. Signposting refers to the words and phrases that you use to do this, sort of like road signs to help your reader navigate your writing. Definitions, thesis statements, or notes on structure. But signposting can also include more subtle words that indicate a relationship between ideas. For example, a relationship of comparison, contrast, or a causal relationship. Metadiscourse is especially helpful when it comes to the clarity and logic of your writing. I think it's important for three main reasons. It establishes a relationship between writer, text, and reader. It helps guide your reader through your argument, and it clarifies relationships between ideas and information. Here are a few examples of common signposting words and phrases. You can see that the first two are making a similar meta kind of move, explicitly setting up the argument and structure of your writing, whether in first person or the third person passive voice. The rest of these examples are a bit more subtle, but they also signal to your reader how you're connecting certain ideas or why you're including specific pieces of information. Now let's take a look at an example and work through it together. This is a sample from one of my own papers, which I just revised for a recent conference. Conference papers are actually a great opportunity to practice with metadiscourse and signposting. When you're presenting a lot of information visually and verbally, and usually in a short amount of time, you have to make things extra clear so your audience can easily follow along. We'll focus on just 2 paragraphs here. These paragraphs come from the first section of my paper. I'm setting up my argument, defining my terms, and situating my analysis in relation to the work of 2 other scholars. Because this section is about mapping out paper structure and establishing relationships between ideas, it's a great opportunity for signposting. There's not much metadiscourse or signposting going on in this paragraph right now. As a result, it's difficult to understand the relationship between one sentence and the next. They don't really flow in a logical way. It's also difficult to discern where I'm staking my argument here. Put simply, for a reader, and especially for someone listening at a conference, this paper is really hard to follow. So let's add some basic signposting to clear things up. Okay, let me walk you through some of the changes that I've made here. First, I've added some language to the first sentence that explains the relevance of the 2 other scholars' work to my paper. This also makes for a stronger topic sentence to open the paragraph. Now we understand what this paragraph will be about. In the second highlighted passage, I explicitly narrow the broader focus of the first sentence to consider just one particular concept. For the sake of a conference presentation, abbreviated also lets my audience know that I've had to make some strategic cuts to a larger project. Looking at the third highlighted passage, the language I've added here, especially the word such, explicitly gestures toward the previous sentence. It clarifies that the embodied experiences I'm talking about are the same or similar to the embodied experiences Pickens has observed. In short, it connects my work with the other scholars' work. The next highlighted bit is a really great example of signposting that clarifies a causal relationship. In the original draft, the connection between this sentence and the previous one wasn't totally clear. I want to emphasize that the accumulative aesthetic I'm observing in the novel is a result of the, quote, extended temporality of the multi-generational family saga that I mentioned in the previous sentence. Just adding the word therefore makes this causal dynamic so much clearer. In the second half of this paragraph, I introduce the 3 main ideas that I'll be presenting in the rest of the paper. But in the original draft, that intention is really unclear. The organization of these sentences seems random. Here are those 3 ideas, highlighted in separate colors for clarity. In the second sentence, the word moreover indicates that I'm beginning to construct a list of ideas. In the third sentence, the word finally indicates the end of the list. Also, the full phrase I've added, I finally argue, is an example of metadiscourse that helps my audience know what to expect from the rest of the paper. Nearing the end of this paragraph, I've again added thus to clarify a causal relationship between 2 ideas. And finally, I've added a sentence that previews the specific focus of my paper, and which begins the transition into a new section. So to recap, metadiscourse and signposting are important because they establish a relationship between writer, text, and reader, help guide your reader through your argument, and clarify relationships between ideas and information. So that's just a little bit about metadiscourse and signposting and how you might integrate it into your own writing.